Runs NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here with Mike Gallagher to walk you through tonight's 8-game slate, an 8-game slate that features 12 of the 16 teams on back-to-back. So as a result, injury information is getting parsed together throughout the course of the day. Also, with just 5 days left in the regular season, there are more playoff situations starting to get a little bit clearer. That's going to lead to teams maybe not having as much to play for. We'll cover all of that along with the injuries. To do it with me, Mike Gallagher. How are you on this fine Wednesday?
Doing good. Yeah, had a fun little playback, doing some underdog drafts. Possibly TMI, but need a shower today. I've been in the same clothes for like 24 hours. But no, I don't think anybody cares. I'll get one after this though. But yeah, I made a little incentive little slide here. We can kind of go over who's got incentive to win, some incentive, and then teams that are basically locked in. Only 2 teams have incentive to lose today, which is why we're seeing a Wizards injury report that is loaded with outs.
Yeah, and these percentages brought to you by
playoffstatus.com.
Playoffstatus.com. There we go.
You can mention the basketball reference ones that are a little different too.
Yeah, basketball reference has a playoff probabilities page. So there are some differences in methodologies and calculations, but the general idea we can kind of walk through here. So let's start there. Teams that you have in the big incentive to win category: Pelicans. I question the Mavs a little bit more. We can talk through that in a second.
Really?
Hawks, Raptors. And I would say I think the Nets have huge incentive to win. You have them in some incentive to win category. But I think Pelicans, Hawks, Raptors, like very clear. Those teams are in the play-in currently, battling for positioning. And obviously the 7-8 is huge as opposed to the 9-10 in terms of your play making it into the playoffs as well. So those teams feel fairly secure. The reason I highlight the Mavs is just simply there was some talk about whether, Shams Charania was saying, they might rest Luka and Kyrie the rest of the way. The Mavs get their pick, I believe, if it's top 10. Yep. I believe it's a top 10 protected pick. And if you're in the Mavs shoes right now, like in terms of ways to improve this roster before it becomes a real issue for Luka Doncic long term, losses would really help to have that pick. It would really, really help to have that pick. And their chances of making the play-in right now are fairly slim. In terms of, we're talking about like 30% chance of making the play-in now at like kind of a best case scenario. So I think it's questionable on Dallas in terms of what their motivations are. Obviously, we saw that Luka said he'll play as long as there's a chance. My guess is that takes precedent. Like Luka's happiness and Luka's mentality takes precedence. So if he's playing because he thinks there's a chance, my guess is they play this straight up. But I just wanted to highlight that organizationally, I would not be surprised if there were people, especially in the front office, that were like, we wouldn't mind having the chance of the top 10 pick.
Yeah, to add to that, it would have been real interesting if Utah had won last night on like a couple levels. But namely, so just to give a little bit of background on why, like, okay, they're still top 10 if they aren't in the play-in, but man, if you're 9th, you're pretty much locked into keeping that pick. It's probably I don't know the odds, but it's got to be probably close to single digits that 2 teams behind you hop over you. Whereas, one of these teams hopping over you is not crazy. You see a lot of like 9.4% chances. So I don't know the math off the top of my head, but call it maybe 1 in 5, something like that. So, but then again, I mean, if there's a 30% chance for you to make the playoffs, the vibes will be so bad if they make this big trade after giving up their best defender in Dorian. I think that they got to go for it. As much as that pick is valuable, the offseason will just be a complete disaster. They won't be able to attract any free agents, even with Luka being in his prime. It's just that bad.
Yeah, I don't know if they lose in the play-in versus if they don't make the play-in, if that changes how prospective free agents view things. I think I would think if you're a prospective free agent, having a lotto pick there would be more enticing than not having a lotto pick there.
Yeah.
But it's all subject. I think the most important thing generally is you're dealing with human beings. If Luka's perspective is, if we have a chance, I still want to play, I think that means they're going to try like their hardest here. But I just want to highlight, I do think there's some small risk there. And then
perhaps the obvious part was if OKC would have won last night, I think the guys would be sitting today, like quite confidently.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Then the Brooklyn one I wanted to touch on, because the playoff status has Brooklyn, I guess, as 95% for the 6C. Basketball Reference has them closer to like 78%. The challenge for Brooklyn is because they're currently, in terms of the standings, they're currently one game up on Miami. And if you look at Brooklyn's schedule the rest of the way, this is kind of the game to maybe get. So their magic number, I think, is 2 to finish 6th. And they've got at Detroit, then home versus Orlando, home versus Philadelphia. The Philadelphia game, we have no idea who's going to play in that one. And whereas Miami, from a remaining schedule perspective, they have at Philadelphia, which Philadelphia possibly will still have motivation for that game tomorrow, and then at Washington on the second of a back-to-back, then home versus Orlando. It's possible Miami could sweep that trio, right? Like, it's not out of the world. Like, Washington's not really playing their guys right now. Orlando at home is similar to what Brooklyn has with Orlando at home. And then they both have at Philadelphia, which is a question mark. Brooklyn gets them better because they get them later, so more chance of resting. But I think Brooklyn would view this as like, we kind of got to get this game just to make sure. And I think Brooklyn, more than any other team, when we're talking about like avoiding the play-in, I think it's huge for them, because I don't think they assuredly would get out of the play-in if they were in the play-in. And so I think they're going to play this game very straight up. We see Dorian Finney-Smith is listed as questionable. But I know you had some concerns about that with Brooklyn.
Yeah, Jock Vaughn talked about they went real tight yesterday. They didn't play a lot of their guys. They put a lot of big minutes there. It just gave me a lot of vibes of what March 9th, I think it was, when they had Mikal play the first quarter, and that's it. Seth Curry didn't play the second half. Obviously, this is different. Seth Curry's going to play today, I think, regardless, according to Vaughn. But yeah, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But yeah, it definitely looks like that they're gonna give it a go. But just hearing Vaughn talk about, we're planning to have guys. Why would you not? Why would you say you're planning to? It just kind of me. It just kind of made my antenna go up.
Yeah. If you want to go back to the presentation, we can highlight the other situations. So the teams that have very, very little incentive to win, the Bulls, they're almost locked into the 10 seed. They're playing on the second night of a back-to-back. It's a road back-to-back, but it's not much travel because it's Milwaukee, so they can just drive kind of over there. Grizzlies and Kings are both – the Kings have the tiebreaker over the Grizzlies, so I think the Kings are just going to keep playing as much as they can. The Grizzlies, we've seen them take back-to-backs a little less seriously of late, so I wouldn't be surprised to see the Grizzlies be a little bit more conservative there, the Kings be a little bit more aggressive. And then the no incentive to win category, the Bucks, their magic number is 1 for the number 1 seed, I believe. So they just need a win or a Celtics loss at some point in these last few games. That feels pretty likely. Celtics, they just need 1 win or Philly loss to be locked in on 2, and 1 loss from them or 1 win from Milwaukee locks them into 2. So like, they're very little incentive. And then the incentive to lose category in terms of teams jockeying for lotto ball positioning, the Pacers and the Wizards you mentioned, both kind of tied in that 6th spot. When you've been highlighting that 5th spot is a big jump up in equity that teams are potentially trying to get to.
Yep. Yeah, not too much to add. We got the Grizzlies report, which kind of backs that up. As expected, they played more than we thought. The Blazers game was pretty tight, but I don't think Ja had any chance of playing today. It's just kind of the way it's gone. But yeah, I got not too many questionable tags, but certainly enough that and things can change too. I am so mad at myself because I knew that Jalen Brunson news was coming today. I couldn't get any stale lines. Shame on me.
Well, let's finish out that document, because there are teams that have like really nothing to play for. And that's Detroit, who's now locked into the number 1 lotto spot. They flashed the same injury report they've been showing of late. We thought maybe there's a chance they bring back some of these guys, but most of the guys that they've been resting or not playing due to injury are vets that like, they're probably like, look, man, you shut me down. I'm not coming back for the last 3 games. They added Isaiah Livers to the injury report, who got banged up last night. So they'll be pretty shorthanded tonight in terms of bodies available for them. And then the Knicks, which I think there are flashing yellow lights on Knicks main guys tonight, because Julius Randle is out. They are locked into the 5 seed. They're locked into a first round matchup with Cleveland. They ruled Jalen Brunson out, who goes from not listed on the injury report to out with injury maintenance. And they've got RJ Barrett listed questionable. I'd be surprised if RJ Barrett played. We also had the quotes when Julius Randle went down that Tibbs was talking about wanting to get a look at Jericho Sims a little bit more. We also saw a few weeks back, I guess it was about 10 days ago, when they blew out Houston in the blowout lineup, Trevor Keels made an appearance along with Jericho Sims. The other 3 were Deuce McBride, Obi Toppin, and Quentin Grimes. I think we could see a ton of Obi Toppin minutes. I think we could see appearances for Trevor Keels and Jericho Sims tonight, especially if Barrett's out. We're going to have to project those guys in. But I know like they went to Fournier last game. I think it's a different situation when you're signaling like doing everything you can to lock in the 5th seed versus signaling and make a statement against Cleveland versus signaling like, hey, we're starting to pull off the pedal. And so we've seen really big minutes from Emmanuel Quickly in these spots in the past. I'm not as certain that we get like the 38, 39, 40. He's clearly going to get into the 30s. Like that, it would shock me if there was anything less than that. But I think you might see more Deuce McBride. You might see more Trevor Keels. You might see more Jericho Sims tonight there. And then the teams that are unclear here, the Lakers and the Clippers, which everybody is touting as like the biggest game on the slate for playoff positioning. We have a little bit of a different viewpoint here, and we'll see when the Lakers injury report comes out there on the second night of back-to-back OT win in Utah last night. There's a lot of positioning going on in these playoffs, and both Mike and I think that teams would actually prefer the 7th spot over the 5th spot in the Western Conference playoffs, because we think they'd rather deal with a play-in game where you can win one of 2 games to get into the playoffs, as opposed to a first-round series with Phoenix with a home court disadvantage. That's our thought. It's, we don't know what the teams want, but if that's the case, then both of these teams could theoretically not put their best foot forward tonight. And so beware of this Clippers-Lakers game. We think there's much more likely shenanigans on the Lakers side, being a back-to-back after an OT win last night, but be leery of what the Clippers could potentially respond with as well here, because whoever wins this is going to be in decent position to potentially get up to that 5 seed. And I think where people really want to land is the 6, but that's really kind of out of the Lakers' control. They can control whether they can get to 5 or maybe 7 or 8. 6 is kind of tough for them to control after Golden State won last night.
Yeah, I think it helps quite a bit that the Pelicans lost. You get a little bit of a cushion there. I believe they have a tiebreaker on them. So, I think that if you lose this game, you still got a pretty damn good shot to land in 7, worst case. Obviously, falling from 8, I think would be really bad. But now they got a little cushion there. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they have the tiebreaker. So they got enough cushion where I think, obviously, being 8 or 9 is a risk you don't want to take. But now that you've got a little win streak going here, you got to feel pretty good about winning 1 of 2 home games versus beating a series against a Suns team that hasn't lost with Kevin Durant yet. So, and again, on top of that, just to add the AD context, 42 minutes. He looked really tired last night. I watched his post-game interview, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I haven't been cleared in back-to-backs. We'll see how it feels in the morning." I mean, he just played 42 minutes. Hasn't played back-to-back in months, and we put memes out all the time when I'm going to the locker room. Like, you've got to be a complete buffoon to play him, in my opinion.
Yeah, and of note as well, New Orleans and Minnesota still play each other. So the Lakers are guaranteed that one of those teams accrues another loss at some point, which makes it extremely unlikely that they could fall to 9. They would have to basically lose out. And I think they have one game with maybe Portland or someone like that left that looks very, very winnable. And then they also play the Suns, but they get the Suns on the second night of a back-to-back They have Utah again. That's who they have. Utah at home again. And then their game Friday against the Suns is getting the Suns on the second night of a back-to-back. That seems like a clear rest spot for the Suns. Like they would have no reason to force anything there. So the Lakers schedule looks a little bit tougher on paper with this, at Clippers, than Phoenix, but that Phoenix game could be soft. The Utah game at the end should be relatively soft, even though they struggled to beat them in Utah last night. So I think if you're looking at it from the Lakers perspective and they're saying, hey, if we can get to 43, we're assuredly top 7 if we get to 43. And if we get to 43, we're probably a good chance to get top 6. And you got to think, even if they lose this one, they feel okay. And so in 42 is probably 7th. So, they're in a position where we'd be surprised if they put their best foot forward tonight.
Yeah, and they would have been thinking their lucky stars if the Warriors somehow lost last night, because they had the tiebreaker on them. So they would have been in the 6th spot, sitting pretty, and then they could have basically punted this Clippers game, and they would have really controlled their own destiny for 6. So still got to wiggle your way here. But if you get this win here, you're kind of putting yourself in the number 5 seat at risk. So I think it's just not worth it. And we'll see what LeBron we should add to. Obviously, he hasn't played a back-to-back yet. They haven't had one since he returned from his foot injury. So, these guys are playing through a lot of injuries. It just seems like it makes no sense to play them.
And as we've highlighted with these teams that potentially could end up in the play-in, they're not going to have as much recovery time after this condensed schedule. They're going to be playing Tuesday or Wednesday night, right? They're going to be playing if they're in the 7 or 8 game, they're going to be playing Wednesday or Thursday night. So they'll have a little bit of time, but not a lot. Okay, let's get into the game by game stuff and talk some injuries. Let's start with Nets and Pistons. On the Nets side, Dorian Finney-Smith listed as questionable. That's the only big injury listed for the Nets. What's your read on Dorian Finney-Smith's availability tonight?
He's been dealing with this. We saw him get hurt again yesterday, so this is a new injury, or at least an aggravation of it. So I think he could definitely miss. Would likely and quite obviously put Royce O'Neal in the starting lineup. He's been clearly their 6th man. He finds minutes regardless, so he would really benefit. And again, just keep your eyes peeled. Maybe I'll retweet if I see anything funky. But we know this team did one of the strangest substitution patterns we've seen in this season. So just wanted to note that. But just look at this rotation. They went real tight here, which is what can be a little bit of pause. But then again, the hashtag biggest game of the season that year. So that may have been the reason why too.
I think they're just trying to do everything they can to get 6. And they got to feel like this string of Detroit, Orlando is like, that's how they close it out. Maybe they get a little help from Philadelphia beating Miami, but I think they're going to go as full as they normally would on a back-to-back, but obviously that one game leaves trauma. On the Detroit side, Isaiah Livers doubtful, slew of guys out as usual: Burks, Bogdanovich, Bagley, Cunningham, Hamidou Diallo, Rodney McGruder, Isaiah Stewart. So when Livers went down last night, the commentators noted they only had 7 players available if he was unable to return. So is the math still the same tonight? Do they only have 7 players available? What are we expecting from the Pistons?
I don't think that was right, because they got 9. They had 9 guys yesterday. Yeah. So yeah, Roden's still there. They could bring Buddy Boeheim back. They'll probably call him up and have him available. I'm sure he's got plenty of 2-way days left. So yeah, I think we've seen Omiyuri play a little bit of 3. I think we could pretty much lock in the double big lineup of Duren and Weissman here. We saw that yesterday. Jaden Ivey, Killian Hayes. Wouldn't be surprised if they start small with Kojo. Certainly wouldn't be surprised to see RJ Hampton. We know Dwayne Casey, he loves that, elevate the 3rd unit guy and put him in the starting lineup move more than really any other coach in the league. So, I think there's a pretty decent chance to Omiyuri getting in that 2nd unit again. Be curious to see where his lines are at. And shout out to us. We kind of were betting on that they were going to maybe go double big. Would have been really pissed if we didn't win that bet, because that was just really good process by us. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's not Omiyuri, just because Casey loves to find roles for guys. So really a bunch of candidates. Literally anyone on the bench is a candidate to start here. Omiyuri, Corey Joseph, RJ, Roden. Wouldn't be shocked if it's Buddy Boeheim. But one thing we could probably bank on here, again, no incentive to lose. So you could probably see a lot of minutes out of these guys to close strong.
It's just development at this point, so you could see some big lines as we saw last night. They should have 9 though if they want to play Boeheim, right? Boeheim would be 9 essentially.
Yep.
You remove Livers from the 9 they had last night. Roden's minutes, get extended a little bit more, and then Boeheim's the 9th if they want to go that route. Okay, let's move to Indy and Indy and New York. On the Indy side, this Miles Turner questionable tag. I'm so over it at this point. Tyrese Halliburton has been listed out comfortably. Chris Duarte still out. Miles Turner questionable, left ankle soreness. He's been questionable the last 4 or 5 games, has not played in any of them. You mentioned this is a team that has incentive to lose at this point in the season for lotto ball odds. Would be surprised if he plays again, but they keep listing him questionable. So, and then they also have Gabe York listed questionable, G League 2-way contract. What are your thoughts on what we see from the Pacers tonight?
We love the birthdays, guys. We've got They gave the birthday starters jerseys out yesterday. We saw them do this with Buddy Hield getting the benching thing. You see a lot. You see what's going on here. It's quite clear that they're going to start Andrew Nembhard, and Mathurin, Aaron Nesmith, Jordan Nwora, and you see a starter's jersey on Jalen Smith right there. So they're alternating again. They're going to start Jalen Smith again. That's been the pattern that, shout out to me, I noticed right away. And also one other thing to note here, this is interesting, and it has to do with the bench unit. Gabe York has 3 games left on his prorated 2-way deal. If anybody else notes this on their show, A, they're stealing it from me, and B, if they're not, shout to them. So Carlisle said they're going to probably look at Gabe York because they have 3 games left. He has 3 days left on his prorated G League deal. So that means he could take some minutes here. We did see in that video, Buddy Hield had a second jersey unit on, and TJ McConnell had a second jersey unit on. I didn't see one on O'Shea Brissett. Maybe I didn't notice that. So I could see Gabe York fitting into that role, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Gabe York fit into either McConnell's role or Buddy Hield's role as they're tanking again. They want to lose games right now. So I expect Gabe York to lose that Q tag today and probably play. This won't be affecting Andrew Nembhard at all. Won't be affecting Benny Mathurin at all. I think those guys are safe. Could affect Nwora or Nesmith a little bit. But yeah, keep an eye on where you come for the incentives, but you stay for the Gabe York analysis here.
All right. On the Knicks side of things, we mentioned how they handled Jalen Brunson, who's been ruled out along with Julius Randle. They also have a questionable tag on RJ Barrett tonight. And this is one where, for me, the questionable tags with illness as well. For me, it just seems like they're moving in the direction of getting a look at other guys. Now, they also have Daquan Jeffries listed as out. Who are the other guys? Well, I think it's Deuce McBride and Jericho Sims and Trevor Keels. Keels was, I think, their first round pick or maybe a second round pick. I know I think he was a second round pick, actually. I know the analytics community liked him. Some of the guys I follow on Twitter for draft takes thought he was a pretty interesting prospect. He got into a game a few weeks ago. So I still think it's going to be relatively tight from Tibbs, right? They're not bringing out Derrick Rose, I don't think. What do you think so? You think we're going to see Derrick Rose tonight?
Nothing to play for, man. Why not? Why not sit him? I don't know. Just keep an eye out. I think we'll get some information here, but they could definitely post some funny biz.
So who do you think is
road game?
Who do you think is at risk of getting sat?
I mean, RJ Barrett, number 1, right?
Yeah.
Pretty big workload on the year. I think I would put Grimes. Actually, no, I put Mitch Robb second.
Yes.
Then I go Grimes. Then I go Quickly. Then that's probably it for guys I'm concerned with. I have zero concern on Obi.
I think it's more a situation where you're going to see, if you see anything, you see like Quickly's minutes managed to where he's like at 30, 32 instead of the 38, 39. But I think they want to play him to get the chance to pump up the stats, even though it's not in the bench role, pump up the stats for 6th man of the year. I do think Obi Toppin's going to get a long look tonight. I think we might get late season Obi, which was really, really good for people last year. Imagine it would be really good again in this matchup. But the guys I'd be concerned about are the same as you. Mitch Robinson, I don't see much of a ceiling to tonight, even though the matchup is fantastic. He's been dinged up all season long and the type of player that could probably use a little bit of time. And they're happy to play Jericho Sims at center or backup 4, right? So like there's a couple different paths there. Josh Hart his minutes probably don't get to like the 38, 39 range, but he probably slides in that starting lineup if RJ's out, right? So just be careful with the Knicks because they don't have lots to play for here. I think the guys that are playing will be trying to win, like as is always the case. But what I mean by that is like Tibbs' substitution patterns are also going to be trying to win with whatever restrictions he has on them. I don't think Tibbs is going to play like quickly, like 12 minutes or something like that, right? Like if they're in the starting lineup, I think they're playing 30, essentially what I would say.
Yep.
Okay. Let's move to Bulls and Bucks. The Bulls have not filed, so we have no idea what their intentions are for the slate. The Bucks have also not filed, so we have no idea what their intentions are.
We're gonna probably get that in 4 minutes. Why don't we just wait for that and hit the
let's move to Celtics and Raptors. Celtics, we got questionable tags on Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, Peyton Pritchard, Jaylen Brown, and Time Lord Robert Williams are both off the injury report. So we expect them back tonight. Al Horford is listed as out. So it's kind of the back-to-back stuff that we anticipated from Boston. They lose that game in Philadelphia last night without Jaylen Brown. They get Jaylen Brown back tonight. Seems like it's a take the night off Tatum type situation to me. But what are your thoughts here on the Q tags for Tatum, Smart, and Peyton Pritchard?
Yeah, pinch nerve for Smart. Seems like this is a shutdown situation for the rest of the season here. So I would be surprised if he plays, honestly. Tatum, again, it seems like why would you even play him here? Sit him down. Seems pretty obvious to me. Time Lord back. We'll see if he starts. I think he's got a pretty good chance to start here. Maybe try to ramp his minutes up a little bit. We haven't seen too many. And also worth noting, no Malcolm Brogdon. He gets that midday P tag all the time. So keep an eye out for that. But expecting pretty heavy rest here. Yeah.
Do you think the guys who play will play their relatively normal minutes? Thinking about Jaylen Brown. Also, I mean, Derek White, he played 40 last night. Or do you think do you think this is determined by if Peyton Pritchard is available? Like, how vulnerable do you think some of these Celtics guys are to seeing minutes managed in some way, shape, or form?
Pretty vulnerable. I mean, they've got almost nothing to play for here. So I think there's a chance we see some late minutes. It's a bit of a dice roll if you use them in your DFS lineup for sure.
Okay. Toronto side of things, Gary Trent still listed as questionable on the injury report. We did lose the questionable tags for Precious Achiuwa and OG Anunoby, who had those questionable tags last game. So they're good to go. Gary Trent Jr., we've been thinking he's getting closer and closer, but we haven't seen him play yet. Any notes on his availability tonight?
Yeah, so I mentioned yesterday they want to keep a limit on him. So I guess in hindsight, it makes sense to me that it was back-to-back. Okay, well, what do guys on limits do? They don't play back-to-backs. So I think that, reading between the lines, I think that makes more sense. You've got the tougher game today. So I think I feel pretty good about Gary Trent being back today, but I've been wrong before on Raptor stuff. So, but just putting together the pieces of the puzzle here, I think he's got a good chance to return. And also comment from Nick Nurse saying that basically Will Barton took his minutes. So, he would basically probably kick Will Barton out. And there was some other commentary saying, oh, yeah, he stepped in and played pretty well, yada, yada, yada. It seemed like, hey, you've done your job. Great stuff, but bye-bye now.
Okay. Wizards, Hawks on the Hawks side. Trae Young, Bogdan Bogdanovic, both listed questionable. Trae missed last night's game. They played very well, got a nice win on the road in Chicago. Bogdan Bogdanovic listed questionable for injury management. They have been conservative on playing on him on back-to-backs. DeAndre Hunter is still out. They're playing a Washington team that is a shell of itself, but wins are very important for Atlanta here. So my thought process on this is these are legitimate Q tags. Guys are going to be evaluated as the day goes on, and we'll see if they're available. Perhaps they're more conservative on Bogdan if they have Trae available. But I think these are legitimate Q tags. What's your read on Atlanta?
My read on it is it's going to be the 2:30 injury report. I want to see if I get some quick little CLV here. Just 1 second. Come on, buddy. There we go. We got Giannis probable. No Caruso. So we're pretty boring there.
Yep.
Anyways. Yeah, so I think the Bogdan tag reminds me a lot of the Kyle Lowry tag from last week, where Kyle Lowry was questionable, but they were basically making him questionable just in case Gabe Vincent couldn't play. So it kind of strikes me as similar, where like, okay, if Trae Young can play, we'll sit Bogdan out. Played a bunch yesterday. So yeah, I think that's kind of the approach here. But illness tag, day later, tough to get a read there. I think if Trey goes, he'll play a bunch. But either way, we could expect a pretty big role out of DeJounte Murray. And no shout out to John Collins. Pretty big letdown from him yesterday.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move to Memphis. The Wizards side of things. Yeah. Still no Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma, Kristaps Porzingis, Monty Morris, DeLon Wright, Denny Avdia. So, last night it was all of the guards from Washington all going off. Kendrick Nunn, Davis, and Jordan Goodwin all had strong games. Expect heavy minutes from them once again tonight. And then you had a note on Isaiah Todd potentially getting into the rotation tonight. So what are your thoughts on Washington and our expectations there?
Yeah, if you were excited by the Gabe York comments, fasten your seatbelt here. Because there was a comment from Wes Unseld saying that they didn't want to give Todd minutes last night because I read it as like a back-to-back and they want to look at some other people, probably namely Quentin Jackson, maybe Xavier Cooks, maybe Jay Huff. Jay Huff got a bunch of minutes yesterday, but Gafford's not listed. I think Gafford's a little dicey here, right? Back to back. But they said they want to play Isaiah Todd today, so that's another player they want to sneak in minutes for. Maybe he swaps in for Anthony Gill, and they just kind of alternate that spot. So I'm expecting Isaiah Todd to possibly throw a wrench in the situation. We're giving him minutes for our projections, but yeah, there's a lot of downside here to. Really the whole front court, maybe including Corey Kispert to a lesser degree, but we know Johnny Davis is going to play a ton, and then I think everyone else is a little bit on thin ice with how this goes because these guys aren't really big foundation pieces. But we'll see what the starting lineup looks like. But I expect Todd to get minutes today. Yeah,
I kind of think Jay Huff played well enough that they're going to be like, let's get a little bit more of a look at Jay Huff. So I think his minutes will probably be fairly secure. I don't think there's a huge upside to his minutes or anything like that. But in terms of like guys that they probably want to continue to get a look at, Johnny Davis is number one for sure. I think Goodwin might be number two on that list. And then Kispert and Huff, they've had a really good look at Kispert all year long. Maybe it's just like want to get a look at him in like a primary usage role, which they've had for the last few days a little bit. And then guys that I don't think matter as much to them, Anthony Gill, Kendrick Nunn, Xavier Cooks, Quentin Jackson. I think those guys are vulnerable if Isaiah Todd's getting mixed in. Okay, let's move to Grizzlies and Pels. On the Pels side, nothing of concern here for the Pels in terms of it's a back-to-back. They got blown out last night at home. That's concerning. But I don't think you're going to see any change in injury report stuff, right? Like they
did file. They filed, and they've got the usual EJ Liddell who tore his ACL. Jose Alvarado lost his boot in pregame, so he's getting a little closer. And we'll get a big Zion update tomorrow. Didn't practice yesterday, but we'll get a Zion report yesterday, which will be affecting our best ball rankings.
Yep. And then on the Memphis side, we did get an injury update there. You had speculated correctly on this that John Morant listed doubtful tonight. I questioned whether we'd also get Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson and the whole rest crew. Those guys are not listed. Luke Kennard is listed as doubtful, and Xavier Tillman is listed as questionable. So it's not the situation where it's mass rest, but it's a situation where we'll see Tyus Jones slide into that starting lineup. Dylan Brooks will be back tonight. He's not listed on the injury report. So it'll be Tyus Jones, Dylan Brooks, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson. And then if Tillman is available, he would start. If not, I assume Santi Aldama would draw the start. Is that your assumption for Memphis tonight? Okay. Yep. So yeah, it looks like
actually, no, I think that's right. Well, I was going to say there was a comment saying they want to get a look. Kennard's doubtful, so I guess I take that back. But never mind, I take that back. But they wanted to look more at that three-guard lineup, but he's doubtful, so never mind.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just saying maybe they go smaller-ish to because you're going to play kind of small on the other side. But I'm overthinking it for sure.
Okay. On to Mavs Kings. Mavs injury report pretty clean. Luka and Kyrie listed probable. Nobody else there. Kings have not filed yet. So, the Kings wrapped up the division last night. They still have an outside chance at getting the 2 seed. I think they're going to keep pushing. I think that's the way Mike Brown is kind of wired. And that's the way this team has been wired all year long. But we'll see. We will certainly get some inclinations when they do list eventually. Malik Monk was questionable yesterday. He ended up playing his normal role, 23 minutes. You can see even in a relatively blowout win, comfortable win, you got the starters. You got Keegan Murray elevated minutes up to 35. So I think we're going to see Sacramento play it straight, but something to watch out for sure.
Yeah, Fox is playing. We see Fox had this little hamstring thing that popped up, so that concerns me on a back-to-back. Yep. After he's been picking up a pretty heavy workload. So I talked a lot about how pissed Mike Brown was after the Spurs loss. It struck me as a very much like mission accomplished. He gave everyone props. Like just the vibes of the presser made me feel like, okay, we could take it easy now. If things break our way, great. They really like Davion, maybe reward him with some minutes. So I kind of think Fox has a pretty decent chance to sit, which, I haven't looked at the lines yet, but if Vegas isn't assuming that, there could be some nice little, if you're quick on with your fingers to get some value.
All right, let's go back to we'll finish out with LA, and then we'll circle back to the Bulls in Milwaukee. Lakers, we don't have an injury report yet. So as we talked about before, we're speculating that we're expecting to see fireworks on an injury report. Mike, you think in order of most likely to sit tonight, you would have Anthony Davis number 1. Then would you have D'Angelo Russell, or would you have LeBron James number 2? LeBron James number 2?
Okay. 80 by a lot number 1, LeBron by a lot number 2. And Austin Reeves will be number 3 for me. I'm very confident D'Angelo is playing today.
Okay.
Because Austin Reeves he tweaked his ankle a little bit yesterday. Went back for a minute, so he'd be number 3 on my list. And then I guess if you want to count Mo Bamba, got the doubtful tag yesterday. Yeah. But if I had to pick, you and I talked a lot about this morning and just how. Anyways, I won't say anymore. But I feel like they're both going to sit the two big guys.
That's my inclination as well.
Yeah, okay. And then LeBron just played 38 minutes and was asked to do a ton. Obviously, huge game. We talked about the ramifications of possibly losing this game being a good thing. So it just seems question.
I also thought his substitution patterns were suggesting that they were trying to manage him through a little bit because he was at like 28 minutes and subbed out with like 5 or 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Subbed out like at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And I was just it seemed like they were just kind of waiting to see if they could get through it and then had to bring him back. So I think you're right that they're most likely both going to rest, but we'll find out later. The Clippers, the Clippers notes, questionable tags on Eric Gordon and Marcus Morris. Paul George listed out. You've noted repeatedly that your belief is Marcus Morris is not in the rotation when available. Maybe that changes if Eric Gordon is out. In terms of him getting back in the rotation, getting some more shooting there. But what are your thoughts on the Clippers tonight?
Yeah, keep an eye on Gordon. Got dinged up. Doesn't sound serious. I think he's got a good chance to return here. Marcus Morris just returning from COVID protocols and listed with questionable with a back spasm. I think he's getting ruled out regardless. But Covington's kind of back from the dead. Obviously, they're going to play man. Bones Highland's been playing pretty well. They like this double big line that they've been going with. So I think there's not room for him right now. They got Norm back. I just don't think there's any room for Marcus Morris right now.
Yep. Okay, let's circle back on Milwaukee and Chicago since we do have them filed. On the Chicago side, Alex Caruso listed out. That was something that we did anticipate. We also anticipated or suggested last night on the playback stream, perhaps DeMar DeRozan, who's been battling some things, could be listed. He's not. No listing on DeMar DeRozan, no listing on Zach LaVine. I think this means we're going to see the Bulls play this pretty straight. Yep. I think this means that they're still clinging on to those small percentage chances that they could move up to 8 or 9 in the play-in scenario. I think if they were intending to potentially not play it straight, we would have seen a questionable tag on LaVine or DeRozan. So that's my read on this. Do you have any other notes there on the Bulls?
The only thing I'll add is there's been at least 2 instances where DeMar got straight pop-up out tag. It's happened a couple times in the last couple years. So I wouldn't quite say he's ready to go yet. But they've been very clear on that. They're like, we'll get it at like 5:30, whatever. And like, boom, out. Yeah. So again, if you're someone like me who likes to bet that stuff, it's possible. This is kind of where you get the edge. But if we don't get that, I would expect them to play pretty full here. They are kind of just hoping for the best here, that they somehow can, and maybe they're just like, okay, Giannis might sit, we can maybe get this, and maybe cut our odds in half here on moving up.
Yep. On the Milwaukee side, Pat Connaughton and Grayson Allen are both out, so they're a little bit short on the wings. They'll get Javon Carter back. He's not listed on the injury report tonight. Joe Ingles also not listed on the injury report, but we noted last time they had a back-to-back set that Joe Ingles was not listed on the injury report, did not play. I believe it was the front end, and then played on the back end. They're a little bit shorter on wings today, so it's a little bit harder to cover that up without Connaughton and without Grayson Allen. But just something to note that it's possible Joe Ingles, despite not being listed on the injury report, does not play tonight. And then Giannis listed probable, no tags on Middleton or Drew Holiday. I should note, getting Middleton back helps the wing depth quite a bit.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on this Giannis probable tag? And what are your thoughts on Joe Ingles if we actually see him play tonight or not?
Yeah, you laid that out pretty nicely. I think that if Giannis is out, I would think maybe he's a little bit more likely to play. But if Giannis is in, definitely red alert for being a fake active kind of a player. Other than that, and yeah, I mean, we've seen teams just add dudes midday. So that's just something just to think about. But I mean, we know the Giannis probable tag, right? I'm curious to see if Vegas has been learning their lesson on lining dudes, because you could pick out some really good lines. But then again, there's some management risk here for Drew, for Brooke, so all that. But also, now I was thinking too, so this is perhaps galaxy braining a bit, but if you're the Bucks and you could destroy this team, right? Why don't you just do them a favor? Hey, take this game. Because obviously they're not gonna make the 7 seed. So if you help the Bulls out, you're maybe increasing their chances that they get an 8 seed. Again, no chance of the 7 seed. Like, do you do them a little bit of a favor?
Maybe. I think, I mean, if I was Milwaukee in terms of teams that I would be concerned about there, honestly, I'd be more concerned about Chicago than I'd be concerned about Atlanta.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Atlanta would be the team I'd be wanting to play. Toronto and Chicago would be similarly like mildly annoying, but not super. Yeah,
Toronto's the only thing I'd think Toronto. I mean, it sounds like you agree. Like, I would much rather play Chicago or Atlanta than Toronto.
I agree with that, but I don't know that necessarily. I don't know that how manipulatable it is. So I don't know how much they're putting into that. My guess would be very little.
I'm sure I'm galaxy rating for sure. But, anyways, I think Giannis is probably sitting today, honestly.
All right, only 8 games, but we still managed to go 45 minutes or so here. So plenty of information. Yeah, without fan. We'll do the fan version tomorrow, or not tomorrow. Sorry, today's Wednesday. On Friday for a massive 13-game slate. As always, support the people. Speaking of fan, as always, support the people who are supporting us. The show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have daily NBA snake drafts for money running edition, many formats of NFL basketball contests in the offseason. I've been in the albatross streets today because I can kind of just auto draft those. You don't need to do anything but have rankings that you feel comfortable with. We have them for your ETR golf subscribers there. The dance, the playoff best ball stuff, playback. We talked a lot about best ball strategy last night on playback, playback.tv/ETR. If you want to catch some of the notes we had there. Gallagher's been in the streets there.
36 drafts for me. I'm gonna try to 150 and be a true GPP bro.
Good luck. If you're playing NBA Pick'em, in-season subscribers can use our tool to compare ETR projections to their fantasy Pick'em games. If you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use promo code ETR for a matching deposit bonus up to $100. That's promo code ETR at underdogfantasy.com. All right, today behind the paywall, myself and Mike Gallagher at 5 o'clock Eastern today.
Didn't know that. Okay.
Happy Passover to Gary. So Mike and I will be breaking down the DFS slate, the good chalk, bad chalk, the contrarian pivots, and of course the flag plants. A little bit more flag plant success last night. Feeling a little bit better about myself after Alperen Şengün tore up the Nuggets, even with Jokic in. But we will be there 5 o'clock Eastern time behind the paywall. As always, if you are thinking about subscribing to any of our content and you're like, oh man, there's only so many days left in the season, we've got weekly packages, we've got monthly, and they recur on that basis, and we go into the playoffs. So you can continue to get our DFS analysis, Mike's matchups column, so on and so forth when we get into the playoffs as well. As always, if you're uninterested in giving us your hard-earned dollars, we do ask for your hard-earned clicks. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, get notifications whenever we go live. And of course, smash that like button and help feed that algorithm. You help feed the algorithm. It helps feed our families. We continue to feed you the injury information analysis you need to make your DFS lineups, your spread bets, your prop bets. So feed that algo. Nom, 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 nom. We'll see you tomorrow.